Vygotsky's social interaction theory. Lev Vygotsky was a Russian psychologist in the early 20th century who developed a theory known as the sociocultural theory of cognitive development. He believed that a child first learns on the social level and later on the individual level. Sociocultural development is the social interaction between children and those around them. Consciousness and cognition are the end product of socialization and social behavior. Interaction with the child's environment develops into independent learning and thinking. Vygotsky believed that language is the primary way to thinking and understanding. Language is the main means that adults transmit information to children. Cognitive development results from the internalization of language. Thought is the result of language. The ability to think stems from the ability to speak. Private speech, also known as self-talk, is when children talk out loud to themselves. Private speech later develops into internal speech when language develops into thought. Learning happens just outside of a child's comfort zone. This is known as the zone of proximal development. The zone of proximal development is the bridge between what the learner can do and what the learner cannot do. This happens with the guidance and encouragement of a more knowledgeable other. A more knowledgeable other is someone who has a better understanding or a higher ability level than the learner. A more knowledgeable other can be a parent, teacher, or a peer. The MKO's role is to scaffold learning by modeling, guiding, and supporting the learner to become more independent. The zone of proximal development is reached through scaffolding. The learner starts with the skills they can do without help. The more knowledgeable others are the scaffolding that helps the learner reach the zone of proximal development and eventually independent learning. This is done through modeling, guided practice, and collaboration. The first step of scaffolding is modeling. The child observes the more knowledgeable other modeling a behavior or skill. The more knowledgeable other may also provide verbal instructions for the learner. This lets the learner observe how something is done and that it can be done. Once the child observes the MKO demonstrating the skill, the MKO offers guidance to help the learner reach the zone of proximal development. The child does the task with support and collaboration from the MKO. The MKO gives feedback to support the learner to become more independent. After modeling and guidance from the more knowledgeable other, the child practices the task independently. The learner can now demonstrate the skill without help. Now the child has independently mastered the task and they are ready for the next zone of proximal development. The foundations of Vygotsky's sociocultural theory of cognitive development are the same at home and at school, but may translate differently between the two learning environments. Parents have a role as educators within the home environment. Everyday objects and situations are possible learning experiences for children. Parents may facilitate learning without even knowing. Children mimic the behavior of those closest to them. The saying of the apple doesn't fall far from the tree comes to mind. The more knowledgeable other in the home can be the parents, siblings, or other family members. Parents are a child's first teacher. They serve an important role in their child's cognitive growth by modeling and supporting. MKOs at home provide a way for children to receive help that can allow them to reach their full potential. Reaching the zone of proximal development isn't always academic. Since the zone of proximal development is just outside of a child's comfort zone, the MKO scaffolding is to slow and calm down the child through careful questioning. The questioning leads to deeper thinking and internalized as structures for finding solutions. An example of Vygotsky's theory at home is a child learning to ride a bike. The child first observes a more knowledgeable other riding a bike. At this point, the child can't ride a bike, even with help. The MKO prepares the child for the zone of proximal development by showing them what it looks like and how it is done. The first time riding a bike without training wheels can be scary and frustrating. Without the parent's encouragement, the child may give up. The parent guides the child through the zone of proximal development by supporting and guiding them to independently ride a bike. Through independent practice, the child can now ride a bike without help. The parent provided the scaffolding that the child needed to bridge the zone of proximal development. Later, the child may become the MKO for another child learning to ride a bike. Vygotsky's theory in the classroom is different in many ways because it is difficult for the teacher to meet the needs of all students. There are various practices that teachers can use to guide all students through the zone of proximal development, such as formative assessments, small group instruction, and the gradual release model. Formative assessments are important for Vygotsky's theory because they allow the teacher to know the ZPD of individual students and the class as a whole. By knowing the ZPD of the students, the teacher knows what they can do without help and can plan instruction accordingly. Students in a classroom have varying levels of learning. Small group instruction allows the teacher to scaffold through differentiation. Not all students are ready to learn a skill. The teacher can guide students through their zone of proximal development so they can be ready for the next skill. Students can be placed in small groups through the analysis of formative assessments. The teacher can differentiate scaffolding by placing students in groups with similar ZPD levels. This allows the teacher to reach the needs of all students. While the teacher is working with a small group, the other students can practice the skill independently and collaboratively through different station rotations. Collaboration and independent practice helps the student master a skill. The gradual release model is an instructional model where teachers strategically transfer the responsibility in the learning process from the teacher to the student. This is also known as I do, we do, you do. During the I do component of the gradual release model, the teacher explicitly teaches and models the skill within the student's zone of proximal development. The students observe what mastery looks like and how it's accomplished. During teacher modeling, the teacher may demonstrate private speech or thinking out loud. Remember, private speech eventually becomes internal speech or cognition. The we do component of the gradual release model is the scaffolding to the zone of proximal development. The students can't yet demonstrate the skill independently. The students are able to demonstrate the skill with guidance from the teacher. The step between the we do and you do components is you do together. This is where the teacher can plan cooperative learning strategies. Students work together with a partner or group to accomplish a task. These strategies are socially beneficial and increases engagement as the students work towards independence. Finally, the you do component is the last step in crossing the ZPD bridge to independence. The students can independently practice the skill. The teacher can use formative assessments to determine if further teaching is needed or to move on to the next ZPD. As you can see, Vygotsky's socio-cultural theory of cognitive development can translate to many learning environments. Parents and teachers have an important role in a child's cognitive development. I hope this explanation and analysis was helpful to you. Thank you.